Shoot. Uh-oh. Sorry.
Welcome. My name is Corinne Waldow. I'm the Economic Development Director with the Boulder Chamber, and I want to welcome you to this week's Manufacturing Critical and Non-Critical Office Hours. Thank you for attending today's programs, and if you've attended previous ones and future ones, to continually get your answers to how to safely reopen in today's environment. Please continue to ask questions, get clarification on information, and provide feedback as we evolve in our current landscape. We want to thank all our partners at the other chambers and economic development authorities, and we want to thank Boulder County Public Health for offering these times to answer your questions and to take your feedback. At this time, I'm going to hand it over to Zach, but please put your questions in the Q&A feature as they come up.
Thanks, Corinne, and thank you to the Boulder Chamber for continuing to partner with us and help produce these webinars, as well as thank you to our other economic partners who support these webinars as well. So today, we're going to cover updates about Safer at Home, go over some resources to support you, and then as always, have plenty of time for your Q&A. So last week, Boulder County extended our face covering order. That goes through June 30th. Also, Governor Polis extended the Safer at Home order to June 1st, though it's important to note about that June 1st date that is just the time at which he'll have another update to the order. I can't imagine a scenario in which the order would expire without an update. So please don't take that June 1st date as, oh, we'll be out of, all the orders will be lifted on that date. There's pretty much a 0% chance of that happening. On May 25th, private campsites opened. Yesterday, restaurants were allowed to open at 50% capacity. On June 1st, day camps and youth sport camps will be able to be open. And then again, on that June 1st date, we are expecting the next update to Safer at Home and perhaps some more changes coming up. But I want to remind you, long-term, Safer at Home is going to continue to evolve. It's going to evolve, not go away, until we have a vaccine or treatment, and that is going to be months. So, just to continue to set your expectations that, we will need to continue to take precautions. There will likely continue to be public health orders for the coming months until we have a vaccine or treatment. And we hope that, with everyone's good behavior and compliance, that we're able to continue to keep case counts down and we don't need to go backwards into a more restrictive order. But if case counts did rise, then we would have to look at that. So, again, just want to remind you that COVID-19 is still just as contagious. We're just changing the way that we're responding with, increased testing ability and increased contact tracing ability, and increased, procedures that you're putting in place at your businesses to help, keep your employees safe and help reduce the rates of transmission during this pandemic. But it's important to continue to stay at home as much as possible. And if you've got employees that can work remote, continue to have them working remotely. Also, as a reminder, our face covering order is still in effect. So I want to thank you for those who provided feedback on our face covering survey. It informed our decision to extend the order, and we'll briefly cover some of those results. So in general, the respondents reported that customers are good at doing physical distancing, with some, doing it nearly 100% of the time. But in general, mostly pretty good. Although there's definitely room for improvement in terms of customer behavior on physical distancing, as well as the practices and procedures and controls and engineering put in place to encourage customers to do that while visiting your business. We are pleased to see that in general, the opinion of the face covering order was fairly favorable, that it strikes the right balance between protecting public health and not being too onerous on businesses. So that was positive to see. And about 92 businesses have reported about 92% compliance rate with customers wearing face coverings. Which, if you compare that to our nearby counties that don't have face covering orders, you see much lower rates, with Arapahoe County at 74%, Adams County at 84%, and Douglas County at 77%, compared to our 92% with a face covering order in place. And it's not the whole story; it's not the only factor. But if you look at Boulder, Larimer, Denver counties all having face covering orders, and particularly for Boulder and Larimer, and Boulder in particular, right? Quite similar to our nearby Denver metro counties, but having a much lower incidence of new cases per 1,000 people over the last 2 weeks. So, we interpret that as good behavior and actions by our community, by our businesses, and also again with the support of the face covering order certainly is contributing to that. So there are face covering orders in Boulder County has one, Erie has one, Superior, Louisville, Lafayette all have their face covering orders, and we are producing a guidance document that really clarifies in each community what is the most stringent order that applies. But in essence, just bring a face covering with you whenever you leave your residence. If you're not able to maintain 6 feet while you're out, then you have it and you can put it on. Also, for all manufacturing, you must wear masks when coming within 6 feet of others, except where doing so would inhibit your health. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Alexandra Phillips, who is our lead liaison for manufacturing, and she'll take it from here.
Thanks, Zach. So the big question that I get with manufacturing is, what is the difference with the rules between critical and non-critical manufacturing? And does non-critical have to follow both the rules? So there's 2 sets of rules. There's the general rules that the critical manufacturing has to follow, and then there's specific non-critical manufacturing rules. Non-manufacturers have to follow both. One of the big differences is within the non-critical manufacturing, there's a limit to 10 people per room and maintaining 6-foot distancing, where there isn't that requirement in the critical. And just a note also that a lot of the manufacturing that I've spoken to also has an office space at their facility, and that office space would fall under the checklist for the office space. So there's a specific one for that. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. There are these checklists. Here is the checklist. This is found on the Boulder County site.
You're not sharing your internet. You're only sharing your PowerPoint.
Oops.
You have to unshare.
Mm-hmm. And then share. I thought I'd set it up differently. Okay. Thank you. Is that good? Yes. Okay. So there is the manufacturing checklist, and here at the top is the general, as I refer to it as the general, the critical and non-critical manufacturing checklist. And if you go further down, there is a section that starts with, did I go past it? Yes, I did. For additional requirements for non-critical manufacturing only, and there is the no more than 10 employees per fully enclosed room with walls and a closable door. So to, sorry about that. And then there's all these checklists on that website on the boco.org/COVID-19 business. All this information is listed there. The manufacturing checklist and a ton more other information. And just to note that we have the checklists where tons of, and linking also to the state site with their information, but we really can't provide legal advice. That's where you will need to contact your attorney. And also, of course, compliance on the orders that are reflected in the checklist is an obligation, is mandatory. One thing I wanted to cover here is about outbreaks. An outbreak is 2 or more employees with confirmed or suspected COVID within a 14-day period. And you need to report that, immediately send an outbreak form to Boulder County. And then you'll work with the public health, the Boulder County Public Health, to determine what actions are needed. It's not an automatic closure. It really depends on the circumstances. So the sooner you know about the outbreak of 2 or more people and you can report it, the sooner actions can be taken that might not involve closure. One question I had that just came up this week, found out a manufacturer actually didn't have an outbreak because it was only one employee that came down with COVID, and that's a really good time to act really quickly so you avoid the outbreak. And here there's on the state site, there is this preventing and reporting and mitigating workplace outbreaks. And if you do have that one person or 2, you know, anytime there is anybody with confirmed or suspected positive COVID test or suspected COVID, sorry, close off the area, open all the doors and windows, use ventilating fans, wait 24 hours or as long as practical before cleaning, and clean and disinfect all the surfaces that person may have touched, and really focus on those frequently touched surfaces. And what if an employee might not have any symptoms, but was exposed to somebody? And the reason I'm covering these questions is this just came up with a manufacturer that I was in touch with this week. So I thought I would share this with you because this is what I'm hearing is going on right now with some people. And this is where there's a little bit of difference between critical and non-critical manufacturing. Non-critical manufacturing, if someone does come in contact with somebody with symptomatic COVID, they need to notify their supervisor and quarantine for 14 days. Now, what is the come in contact with? That is when you're with less than 6 foot social distancing for more than 10 minutes. So it's not just, oh, I passed somebody in the supermarket or whatever. It's more than 10 minutes and closer than 6 feet. That's where, that's what they're defining as recent contact. For critical, it's pretty much the same thing, but quarantine wherever feasible. That's the difference. And of course, wear the mask. That person would wear a mask and quarantine wherever feasible. There's, as I said, a ton of information. The boco.org COVID-19 business is a really good place to go. The second one listed there is the state site, and that is where the guidance for mitigating and preventing outbreaks is listed. Energize Colorado has links to where you can buy masks and sanitizer and gloves. Manufacturer's Edge is Boulder County organization that is there to help manufacturers. I've heard they do a lot of really great stuff, much of it for free. So that's a really good resource to go to even find out differences you can make in the layout of the manufacturing area to help with the social distancing, they can give you that kind of advice. And we're doing this every week, Thursdays at 1 o'clock for manufacturing. I feel like, did we skip a slide? There was one slide. I will just cover it without a slide then. There was a relatively new order that came out last week that slightly changes the critical manufacturing on mask wearing, where now the wording is shall wear a mask when you're coming in contact with anybody. Before, the wording for the critical manufacturing was a little bit looser. So now for both critical and non-critical, wearing a mask whenever you're coming in contact with somebody else. And there I will go. That's our contact us, the COVID biz at Boulder County. If you're looking for anything that I referred to here and can't find it on the websites because there's so much information, email or call. Any questions, it's really good to reach out with questions so we can all work together and prevent outbreaks. Corinne,
So we have a few people on a phone today and some new people. Could you maybe go back to the checklist and highlight some of the things that are different about manufacturing facilities, you know, that would be very important for people to remember doing in a manufacturing facility?
Mm-hmm. Here's this checklist.
So you're gonna have to unshare and then reshare your other screen again.
Yeah, I'm just hoping to, okay. So in this checklist, at the top is the critical and non-critical about, is this working? Are you seeing it?
You're not sharing it. Nope.
Yeah. Oops, sorry. Let's share screen. And, oh no, I can't tell which one it is. I'm sorry, give me just one moment here. This is odd. I don't know why it's not. Let's see if that works.
Nope. Well, yeah, that was your website. You could just, you just change the site.
Yeah, there it goes, right? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you go to our website, to the BOCO website, it'll come up easier for you. You want to share your screen. And the critical and non-critical. And here it is: maintain social distancing when possible. A lot of frequently sanitizing high touch areas. This is for the general. And then this is what has changed right here: wear appropriate gloves and encourage appropriate use. That's we'll be changing that as soon as I'm off this webinar to make that language reflect the new order that is a little bit stronger, to wear masks whenever you're coming in contact with employees or other employees or the public, customers or vendors. There's also for customer requirements, and again, this is the general, create special hours for high risk, install shields or barriers between customers. And I know for manufacturers, a lot of that is not customers, but vendors coming in and employees. And this is where it gets, for the non-critical manufacturing, no more than 10 employees for fully enclosed room. That's the real big difference there. And then cleaning, both cleaning between shifts, making cleaning supplies available for employees so they can clean as they go, especially those high touch areas are really important. And then this one also has a For customer related requirements when they come in, restrict all non-essential external visitors, require 6-foot distancing.
So I noticed one thing in there that's in the non-critical, but it's also a best practice is to create single flow patterns.
Yes.
How are some manufacturers doing that? Are they putting tape on the floor, arrows? I mean, are they restricting which way and how people, there's not a lot of mixing of individuals?
Yes, one way to do that, I've heard one business was using a door that they weren't using previously for the so that people could go in without passing people going out. That's one way. Another thing is to talk to Manufacturer's Edge, who can really help on those questions, because they're very familiar with how manufacturing facilities are set up. But one way to look at it is think about different doors, putting tape on the floor with the arrows. Things like that are also really helpful. Signage, arrows, because this is brand new to all of us. We're not used to working in a world like this. So the reminders are very helpful.
Well, even in meetings, like we all have a meeting that starts at 2 o'clock and we all rush in at the same time at 1:59. So we got a bunch of people rushing into a door, even if we're going to social distance when we come into that conference area. So, or we're all going to lunch at the same time, and we all go to the refrigerator at the same time, or we all get our coffee. So just keeping in mind those places where people can convene, even if everything's all automatically distanced out.
And that is also in the checklist. Thank you for mentioning that, Corinne, that to stagger the lunch hours, to stagger breaks, to stagger when people are coming in and out also helps that. And if there is a meeting, maybe some people can attend either from home or from a different room in the facility. And in any meeting, no more than 10 people with the physical distancing. And as Corinne mentioned, the real tough time that's hardest to do that is coming in or out. So think about, can we have this meeting in a room that is 2 separate doors, use one for maybe have people come in through 2 separate doors.
So we do have a question about the difference between a manufacturing and the office. And so can you distinguish when they need to follow the manufacturing checklist and when they need to follow the office checklist? And maybe we can go into the office just to look at it.
Yes. So one of the big differences is in the office checklist, you have to be 50% of the people in the office. And if you're going every other desk, then that also helps maintain that distance. And hopefully I will have an easier time with this screen share here. Did that work?
There you go.
Okay. So this is for office-based businesses, and in here, ensure a 6-foot space between desks. And again, modify the flow. Wearing a mask anytime you're coming in contact with other staff or customers. So that let's see, the 50% is listed
Under the employer-related requirements.
Yeah, thank you. Right here is one of the really big differences. Maintain an office occupancy at no more than 50% of total at any one time. So that's one of the big differences. And then again,
so do they use the manufacturing for the manufacturing floor? And then when you have the office space where you might have, the people, your HR, your CFO, your accountants, those working on computers and at stationary desks, they should follow the office protocols?
Exactly. And if that kind of description doesn't fit what you have, you can call us and discuss with us at the call center, which I'll bring up that phone number in just a minute. Or Manufacturer's Edge is another really good resource for that. Let me go back and
they are actually a statewide resource with a local liaison. So Janine Lettingham is the local resource, and like I said, we've provided that. All of those emails I've sent out have that as well. I do have a question while you're changing. It's a rather large question, but it has to do with mask wearing. This manufacturing facility has an employee at a critical manufacturing site who's concerned about mask wearing. They currently require employees to wear masks when walking through common areas and when 6 feet cannot be maintained. But it's currently not required from working at their own individual space, like in an office or a cubicle. The employee believes masks should be worn at all times due to the HVAC circulation within the office area. Is this something that needs to be, what should this person do?
So the question is, somebody, an employee thinks that a mask should be worn no matter how much distancing there is between people because of the HVAC.
Correct.
Well, they've got a point. And being safer than the rules is great, but the rules is the way it's written is when you have coming in less than 6 feet. Zach, did you want to add to that?
Sure. So here's what the face covering for critical business order says. Workers who may routinely or consistently come within 6 feet of other workers or the public are considered to be in close proximity to others and must wear a medical or non-medical face covering that covers the worker's nose and mouth, unless doing so would inhibit the individual's health.
So that employee, if they're comfortable, if they want to wear the mask all the time, I would strongly encourage that, actually, and not. I was in a meeting once just a week or so ago when somebody said, oh, you're in an office by yourself, you can take off your mask, but the person wasn't comfortable doing that. So that's a great thing to go beyond that.
And so I would say, if you're, the question says currently not required for working in your own individual space, office, or cubicle. There's scenarios where that would be true. There are scenarios where it would also be true that it would still be required if you're, going to be routinely still coming in contact with others, close proximity to others. So it's a bit of an interpretation. But certainly, from a public health standpoint, we would encourage, all individuals to wear a mask anytime you're outside your residence. However, that's not necessarily what the order says, but we would certainly encourage that.
On the office calls, some places that have cubicles, for example, where the cubicles don't go all the way up, it's not an enclosed space, and people walk by their cubicles, are still having people wear masks because the doors aren't, because when you're seated at your desk and the person in their cubicle, you can't guarantee you're going to continue to keep that 6 feet. People are walking by to go to the bathroom or to other cubicles. So they've chosen to have people wear masks the whole time.
Right. And in our interpretations, we're defining a separate space as 4 walls and a door. A cubicle does not meet that criteria.
Okay. And one thing really quickly to add to that is we keep talking about a mask. This is a non-medical mask. It could be yes, exactly. And the description is with 2 pieces of material that cover your mouth and nose and don't need to be adjusted to stay on your mouth and nose.
I just happen to have a Boulder Chamber one because, I didn't know I was going to have one of those earlier in my career. We have another question, and we got to thank you from the person on the mask question. So I think we covered that well. We have a question about restrooms. What are the recommendations about restrooms, especially with the enclosed nature, ventilation? What are some of the things you would suggest on rate? Are they either required or suggested for restrooms?
Well, so, actually, I don't think it is in this requirement for critical. Zach could correct me, but one thing some others are doing, especially restaurants, are closing every other stall if it's a larger restroom, so you can maintain social distancing while in there. You can also just have one person use it at a time. And of course, the requirement is frequent cleaning, especially of the high touch areas, and cleaning between shifts.
Okay. Are there any other questions from those attending? All right, well, oh. So someone said they're concerned about employees who report possible exposure and recommended steps to take. You know, I think there's this trepidation about what do I do? What can I require an employee to do? So if you could just maybe walk through that and maybe talk a little bit about which of these pieces can you require your employee to stay home and quarantine if they've had exposure, those types of things.
Yes, you can require that if there's been exposure for the non-critical. The critical, if it's possible to do the quarantine, you can require the face masks, require the frequent cleaning, the hand washing. Another way, I'm not sure, I didn't read the question, but another thing maybe is there are some businesses, employees calling our call center about businesses and asking questions. And if that happens, if your employee wants to do that, what will happen is we'll call you and just discuss with you in more depth the checklist. It's not like we're out to look for, to get you. We're actually just trying to educate and build awareness. And so if somebody has questions, an employee or management, a great thing to do is call so we can look in depth at the checklist together and discuss things together.
So they clarified the question that they're concerned, I think they're a manager and are concerned in a non-critical manufacturing facility about the steps you take when employees report possible exposure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's really situation. Unfortunately, it's it's very highly situational dependent. I would love to be able to just give you okay, here are the exact things, but exposure is different, right? How do you compare, someone coming within 5 feet instead of 6 feet, for a minute versus, being together in a room, across the room for a longer period of time, right? It's all very situational dependent. So the best thing to do if you have concerns is to reach out to us at that covidbiz@bouldercounty.org email address, and then we can address the specific situation that happened and what would be the recommendation. But it's really hard to say, to have a blanket advice, for all situations, because there's such variability in what that exposure was and for how long, and was it indoor, outdoor, that type of thing. So I would really encourage you just to reach out to us with your specific question or concern, and we can help address, what would be the best practice in terms of, keeping your employees safe and keeping the public safe given what specifically had occurred. I'm sorry, I wish we could give a more definitive, clear answer, but the trouble with that is then, it would be clear to say with any exposure of any degree, all businesses had to shut down for 24 hours, right? But that's not very practical or very helpful or necessary. And so that's why we're really trying to be more surgical and custom given the unique exposure, the downside of which is I can't give you guidance for every scenario, up front.
And one of the reasons the Boulder County Public Health created the team that you did with Alexandra, doing manufacturing, is to be able to do some of these more surgical approaches that were asked for from the business community when all of this started. So, that COVID biz at Boulder County have helped a lot of businesses email into that, and they've gotten responses. If there's responses available, you've talked to some manufacturers on the phone when they have specific issues. And then you had an earlier slide that talked a little bit about the reporting. There are some great resources on the state website as well about, reporting of potential exposures and stuff like that. So thank you guys for being there to answer these questions and to give, to help when situations arise. Are there any other questions out there? I'm just monitoring both the chat and the Q&A. While we're doing that, do you guys have anything to add? I think the reassertion about June 1st doesn't mean everything just returns back to normal. Thank you, Zach, for clarifying that. We were getting emails from businesses last week saying, guess what? Safer at Home ends May 26th, which is not the case. So to continue to stay safe, to know that the mask order is still in effect, and to the safer you can be, the more our economy can continue to open. All right, I don't see any more questions. Do either one of you have anything to add?
No, thanks for attending this webinar.
Yep, and we'll send out the recording along with all the resources that she mentioned in a follow-up email. Some of you are new to today's call, so you'll get probably those resources for the first time or were forwarded in the past. You can watch it, ask questions, provide feedback, and we hope to see you in future weeks as we learn what the landscape will look like in the future. And have a wonderful afternoon. Again, don't be afraid to reach out to us.
Thanks, Corinne.